never more so. I'm absolutely sure there is. We've ignored it at our peril. We have spent a lot of time trying to make sure students are interested in topics, and we've given them nice discussion activities and role plays and all that kind of thing. But in a course that I've been involved in recently, writing with a wonderful colleague, we've introduced something, not an original idea, and I'm not sure where originally. I think it might have its antecedents in some activity years ago that a woman called Sheila Deller did. I'm not sure, but we've introduced something which we now call, and I'm passionate about this, which we've now called suitcase language. And suitcase language simply is this question. Here you are, my dear student, you've just read a text, listened to something. Which three words or phrases from the text would you most like to, I don't mean the class, and I don't mean me, the teacher, which three words or phrases from the text would you most like to put in your suitcase and take home with you? You choose, nothing to do with me. I might ask you, I might not, but which three words do you want to take away with you? And it's a tiny little thing, but it's a sort of graphic little illustration of the fact that rather like those beginning teacher trainees, it's not about what's in the book. It's not about what the teacher is doing. It's about the person who's learning. They're the ones who should not necessarily be in the driving seat. That's a whole other discussion. But it's about what's happening to them. That's what matters. So that also in these materials, recent materials, we spend a lot of time saying your story. We spend a lot of time doing an activity which is an activity from my colleague Jane Ravel, and she calls it Everybody Up. And this becomes very humanistic, where you get students in the middle of the room and you get them talking to each other in groups about things related to what you're doing, which are not necessarily hammering away at some language point, but they're actually getting the students to share and care. And there we are back with Gertrude Moskowitz about 100 years ago. And that element is terribly important. Now, of course, also in materials, things can get wackier and wackier, stranger and stranger. There are lots of humanistic courses and articles around with wonderful ideas which are a bit kind of, which go a bit too far for some more traditional teachers. Because there's this constant tension with people saying, yeah, but my students have to take exams, they have to pass exams. I think the most anti-humanistic thing that happens in course materials, and it's such a phenomenon, is when a student sits down, having just joined an upper intermediate group, and they open their new course book. This was in pre-pandemic days. And they may do that again, though that's another rather interesting question. And it says Unit 1, present, perfect, simple and continuous. And the student says, again? What on earth's going on? And that is so anti-humanistic, it seems to me. That is so anti-humanistic. What you have when you get, for example, an upper intermediate student is someone with all this language around, and the job of the teacher is to bring that out and help the student identify their weaknesses and their strengths and how to correct them and make them feel more and more confident and better about what they're doing. And then you're a humanistic teacher. And even at the beginner level, it's my job. It's a lot easier there because, and indeed for some people teaching beginners is delightful because anything you can help them to achieve is so wonderful. But not many of us teach zero beginners anymore. So I think I'll finish up with that example of these upper intermediate students opening their book and suddenly finding they're being faced with more and more of the same and thinking, what's this all about? But if you were that person, not that language learner, not that person B2 on the B2 C1 border, if you were that person, what would you like that person to feel? And the moment you start answering that question, I think you're becoming quite humanistic.